In this video, we're going to transform this sea of data into this sleek, interactive dashboard. We'll craft this dashboard in 3 steps, starting with cohesive design elements. Then we'll analyze and visualize key metrics. And lastly, add interactive elements for data exploration, and all in under 20 minutes. Now, if you find the pace too fast, click the cog icon in the bottom right and select a slower playback speed. Okay, let's get started. The data we'll be using is some fictional outbound sales call data spanning 11 months. It tracks the salesperson's total calls, calls reached, average duration, deals closed, conversion rate, deal value, and dropped call rate, which is the percentage of people who hang up before the sales rep can speak to them. We've all done that, right? Right, let's start by getting the dashboard canvas ready. We'll insert a new sheet, and I'll just drag it to the front and rename it Dashboard. And then on the Page Layout tab, I want to change the color theme to Aspect. This just changes the color palette and default colors, making them quicker to access. Selecting rows 1 through 8, I'm going to set the fill color to purple. And then for 9 through 40, I'm going to set it just to a paler shade of purple. And I've got a custom color that I'll enter in here, which is F2EFF5. And click OK, and that's done. I'll insert a heading, Sales Dashboard, and we're going to set the font size here to 36, and we'll make it white. And then I'm going to add a subheading that describes the objective of the dashboard, which is evaluating sales agent performance. And we're going to make that 16 point and yellow. Let's just make column A a little bit narrower to bring the heading over to the left. Next, I'll insert some shapes to store my KPIs. And I want this shape here with the rounded top corners. I'll just draw it on, and then I'm going to set the height and width, which is 6.5 and 3.5. And I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees, and we'll bring it roughly into place. Let's change the fill color to gold, and I'm going to get rid of the outline. And we'll reduce the corner radius just slightly. Okay, holding Control and Shift, left click and drag to make a copy. This one is going to be white, and I need to flip the orientation and align them like that. Alright, next I want to insert a vertical line, and this is just going to divide my value and icon in my KPI placeholder. Let's change the outline to this gold color, and we'll change the weight to just a half point. Right, let's hold down Shift and select the shapes, right click and group them together. That's just going to make them easier to move around. With it selected, holding Control and Shift, I'm just going to copy it 3 times by left clicking and dragging, and that's done. Next, I want to insert some icons as a visual indicator for my KPI. First one I want is a phone to represent the calls. Then I want a target for the calls reached. And then I want a prize for the calls that get closed. And then we want some money for the deals. Right, I've got 4 selected. Let's insert them. While they're selected, I'm going to change the height, and we'll change the color to purple. Right, let's move them into place. Just left click and drag and roughly place them. You can always use the alignment tools if they're not perfect. Okay. We're ready to do the analysis for the KPIs and charts, but before we do, I want to let you know that we currently have 20% off all our Excel and Power BI courses until February 15. So if you want to skyrocket your skills, check out the link to the courses in the video description below. On the Data tab of the ribbon, the first thing I want to do is Control-T to format the data in an Excel table. My table has headers, so I'll click OK, and let's rename this Sales Data. This will make it easy to reference, more importantly, update the dashboard. So let's insert a pivot table. We'll put it on a new worksheet, and I'll call this Analysis. Let's bring the field list over closer so that we can see it in context. So here I want total calls, calls reached, deals closed, and the deal value. Let's drag the values into the rows, and with these cells selected, Control 1, and I'm just going to apply some number formatting, and let's repeat that for the deal value. This one's going to be different with currency. This formatting feeds through to the dashboard, so it's best to do it here. Next, I'm going to insert a slicer, right click, add a slicer for the name, And now if I select a name in the slicer, you can see the pivot table filters accordingly. Let's format the slicer purple in keeping with the theme. And we'll set the height and width, 15.48, 3.35, and let's change the height of the button to 0.48 so that we don't need a scroll bar. All right, with it selected, Control X to cut it out, and we're just going to paste it on the dashboard. Next, I'm going to insert a text box for the KPI values. So under Shapes, under Basic Shapes, we've got a text box. I'll just roughly draw it in here. And then with the outer edge of the text box selected, click in the formula bar, equals, go to the Analysis tab. Now if I click on the value in the pivot table, you can see it puts the Get Pivot Data formula in for me. Now text boxes can't have a formula, they can only link to a cell. So I'm going to just select the cell beside and change the reference to B4. Press enter, and now it's got the value. Let's center it, and let's change the font size to 18, and we'll change the font color to purple. All right, that's that done. Let's insert a new text box for the label, and this is going to be calls. Let's apply the same formatting, but we'll make this 18 point. Holding down Shift, let's select both of the text boxes, and then on the formatting, I'm going to get rid of the fill and the outline. Holding down Control and Shift, I'm going to left click and drag to copy them across 3 times. With them selected, I'm going to Control A to select all of the objects, Control 1, and then in the formatting, I want to set the properties Do Not Move or Size with Cells. This is just going to help these stay in place when we insert pivot tables. So let's rename this. This one will be Reached, and we need to change the reference here to B5. And you'll notice it's lost the formatting. This one's B6. Don't worry, I've got a shortcut for that. This one's B7, and this one is Closed, and this one is Value. All right, let's copy the formatting from over here. So with it selected on the Home tab, double click the Format Painter, and then just left click once to apply the formatting. Actually, I'm going to make the font in these a bit bigger. Let's change that to 32 point. That's better. Now this one doesn't quite fit, so we need to make it wider. Let's just select it and see how wide it needs to go. And then with the white box selected, I'm just going to make it slightly wider to accommodate the bigger number. And we'll just bring this over slightly to make sure it's centered. Okay, that's our KPIs done. Let's take a look at the finished dashboard. The next visual I want to insert is this pivot table that breaks the KPIs down by salesperson. So let's go back and do that on the Data tab, Insert Pivot Table, and this one's going on the dashboard, and we want to put it here. Click OK. So this will have the name, total calls, calls reached, deals closed, and deal value. All right, let's close that down. Let's do some formatting here. In keeping with our theme, it should be purple, but you'll notice it has a white background. So I'm just going to change the fill color to the purple that I created earlier. Let's change the headers. This is name, and just add a space after it to differentiate it. And then Control H, we want to replace sum of with just a space. Replace all, that gets rid of 4 of them in one go. And now I can double click to resize the columns. Let's apply the number formatting. So here I want a number, comma separator, and no decimal places. And this one, remember, is my sales value. So we want a currency with no decimal places. Let's add some conditional formatting to help visually interpret the data more quickly. So we'll use data bars. Just select the cells that you want to format. It's automatically going to apply it to the relevant fields in the pivot table, and it will copy that formatting should the pivot table grow. This one I'm going to go with a gradient fill. All right, let's just modify the formatting because they're all the same. So we'll go into Manage Rules and double click on the first one, which is the deal value, and this one, instead of blue, we want purple in keeping with our theme, and no border. Next is deals closed. So this one can be a lighter shade of purple. This is the calls reached. Let's go gold in keeping with our theme. And this one is calls made, but let's just differentiate this slightly by making it paler. All right, let's go with that. And that's done. The other thing we can do is sort the pivot table, more sort options, and we'll go descending order based on deal value because that's our most important metric. And now we can see the highest salesperson through to the lowest salesperson's deal value. All right, that's done. Now we're ready to create the pivot tables for our charts. And the first one is sum of calls reached and sum of deals closed. Let's go and create the analysis for that. So I'm going to copy this pivot table because it's already linked to the slicer. And then let's right click and bring up the field list. So this is calls reached and deals closed. And I want to see it based on the month. Let's move the values across into columns, and you'll notice it's automatically grouped the dates into days and months. I only want it grouped into months, so let's get rid of days, and that's ready to go. And now I can insert a column chart, 2D column chart. Let's get rid of the field list. And the first thing is to right click and hide all the fill buttons. And then I'm going to use the legend as my title. So we're going to move it to the top. We'll get rid of the grid lines. With the chart axis selected, Control 1 to open the formatting. And in here, I want to make sure my minimum is always 0. So I'm going to hard key it. Column charts should always have their vertical axis start at 0. I don't actually need to see my vertical axis because I'm going to add data labels. But I actually want those data labels inside the end. Now the columns aren't wide enough to display them, so let's fix that. We'll change the series overlap to 100 and we'll reduce the gap width to 50, and that just gives the labels space. Let's format the columns, changing the fill to a solid color, but this should be yellow for calls reached, and then this one can be purple for deals closed. Now we need to change the font color here so that we can see it on the purple. Okay, and that's done. Control X to cut it out, and we'll place it on the dashboard. And we're just going to pop it here roughly. All right, let's take a look. The next is the total sales chart. So let's go and build the pivot table for that. On the Analysis tab, I'm going to again copy this pivot table because it has the formatting and the fields that I need. Right click, show the field list. We don't want total calls, calls reached, or deals closed. This is our deal value, and we want to see it by months. Let's go and insert a column chart. And again, rinse and repeat, hide the fill buttons. Again, I need to set the vertical axis to start at 0. And then I'm going to add a trend line, and I'll move the legend to the top. We're going to move the chart title over to the left, and we'll move the legend over to the right. That will just give us a bit more room for our chart. Let's change the chart title to total sales, and let's go about formatting. So here I want to change the width of the column, so we'll change the gap width to 50, and then let's set the color to a solid fill in purple, which is in keeping with our theme. And then the trend line, let's make it yellow just to contrast. We'll have to make it a bit wider, and we'll give it a thicker dashed line. Right, we don't need the grid lines, so let's turn them off. And we're ready to Control X and place it on the dashboard over here. All right, that's 2 done. Let's take a look at the next one, which is our average call duration in seconds. Let's close that down, and then on the analysis, here I haven't used call duration before, so I can just copy this pivot table, and we want to get rid of deal value and put in call duration. Now I need to set that to show the average of the averages. And let's format this number to no decimal places. Let's insert another column chart, and again setting the vertical axis to be fixed at 0. Get rid of the fill buttons. I also don't want grid lines or a legend. Let's change the color and width, so we'll make it 50% gap width, and we'll make it yellow in keeping with our theme. So let's give it a title, average call duration, seconds, and we'll just move it across to the left. Okay, Control X to cut, and we'll paste it on our dashboard just here. Okay, the last one is our average call drop rate. So let's go and build that. On the analysis, again, we haven't used call drop rate, so I'm just going to copy this pivot table, paste it here, and instead of call duration, we want call drop rate. and I want to change the summarization to average. Let's also format it in a percentage with 2 decimal places. Okay, this one is going to be a little different. We're going to go with an area chart, but we still want to hide all field buttons. We'll change the title to call drop rate %, and we'll move it across to the left. This time we don't need grid lines or a legend, but let's format the color here in keeping with our theme. So this time I'm going to go with a gradient fill. It's remembered the gradient stops from my earlier example file, but you can click on them and change them using the drop down here. So that chart is done. Let's Control X to cut and paste it into the dashboard. Right, that's all of our visuals done. Let's just add one little embellishment here. We're going to format the chart with a shadow, just an outer shadow, and I'm just going to select each one and press F4 to rinse and repeat that quickly. Now, we need a little title for this table here, so I'm going to insert a shape, and I'm just going to use this rounded top corners shape. Holding down Alt, I'm going to draw it in. That's just going to snap it to the grid behind. Let's get rid of the outline and we'll change the fill color to the custom purple we created earlier. And I'm just going to add a shadow to the top. The title for this is Sales Agent KPIs. And let's fix the font so we can read it. We'll make it purple and a bit bigger. One last thing I want to do is set some conditional formatting that highlights which salesperson in this Sales Agent KPIs table is selected in the slicer. Because as you can see, if I select Jake, Jake's hard to find because the list here is not alphabetical, but the list in my slicer is. So what we can do is I'll go into the analysis sheet and I'm just going to copy this pivot table because remember this one's connected to the slicer, and we'll bring up the field list and I'll get rid of all these fields. I don't need them. What I want is the name. All I want to know is what name is selected in the slicer, and that's what's present here. So I can use that in a formula to apply some conditional formatting. So I'll select the table, conditional formatting, new rule. Here I want to use a formula and I want to know whether this cell here, and I'm going to F4 twice so that I'm only locking it on the column, and that's going to check all of the names in this column to see whether they equal the name in this pivot table, which is the name that's been selected in the slicer. So let's go into formatting, and I'm just going to format it with a top and bottom border in purple. Let's see how that looks. All right, so now when I select a name in the slicer, you can quickly locate them in the table. So far, the dashboard only has data for January to November, but because we built it using pivot tables, it's super fast to update. All I need to do is copy this December data here, and on my data sheet, in the table, on the very next blank row, Control V to paste, and you can see the table has expanded to include the new data. And now to update the dashboard, keep an eye on this chart here. All I need to do is go to the Data tab and click Refresh All. And just like that, my report is updated. And there you have it, an interactive dashboard that enables data exploration through the slicer and updates with the click of a single button. Pretty cool. Now, if your data isn't in a ready-to-use format like I had for this dashboard, for example, you might need to gather it from multiple files and clean it, check for duplicates, add calculated columns, then check out this video next on how to automate those boring tasks. I'll see you in the next video.